The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a vast amphitheater. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up toward the domed ceiling. The air hummed with different voices speaking in dozens of languages. Translators worked overtime to make sense of it all. Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim sat in the human section with perfect posture. His dark suit was simple compared to the colorful robes and strange armor worn by other species. Next to him, Captain So-Young Park watched the crowd with sharp eyes. She wore her military uniform with quiet pride. Dr. Jamin Lee sat on the other side, reviewing data on his tablet. The three humans looked small in this massive space, filled with beings twice their size. Some aliens had 4 arms. Others had scales that changed color. A few floated in the air without touching the ground. But the humans sat still and calm, like they belonged there. Chancellor Vorthak stepped up to the speaking platform. He was a tall reptilian being with dark green scales and yellow eyes. His voice boomed across the hall when he spoke. "Today we vote on the Galactic Defense Initiative," he announced. "This new alliance will protect our worlds from outside threats. We must choose our members carefully." Murmurs filled the hall. Many species had applied to join this defense group. It would mean shared technology, military support, and protection from unknown dangers beyond their space. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood when called. He walked to the platform with steady steps. The hall grew quiet as he reached the microphone. "Honored council members," he began. His voice was calm and clear. "Humanity requests membership in the Galactic Defense Initiative. We offer our ships, our soldiers, and our commitment to peaceful cooperation." Some aliens laughed. Others whispered to each other. A few made rude gestures that the humans pretended not to see. Trade Minister Zilneth rose from her crystal seat. Her body was made of what looked like living diamond. Light bent around her as she spoke. "The humans want to join our defense force?" she asked with a mocking tone. "What can they offer? Chemical rockets and metal ships? We have technology they cannot even understand." More laughter echoed through the hall. Ambassador Hyunwoo waited for it to end. His face showed no anger or hurt feelings. Admiral Graxis stood next. He was a large being covered in blue fur with 6 arms. "Humans are too emotional," he declared. "They start wars over small things. They cannot control their feelings. How can we trust them with our security?" Captain So-Young's jaw tightened, but she stayed seated. Dr. Jamin continued reading his tablet as if nothing was happening. "Their technology is primitive," added another voice from the crowd. "They still use combustion engines. They fight with bullets and explosives. They are not ready for modern warfare." Chancellor Vorthak raised his hand for silence. "We will now vote on humanity's application." The voting process was quick. Red lights appeared across the hall as species after species voted against humanity. Only 3 small worlds voted in favor. The final count was not even close. "The application is rejected," Chancellor Vorthak announced. "Humanity is not ready to join the Galactic Defense Initiative, perhaps in a few hundred years, when they have evolved beyond their current limitations." The hall erupted in cheers and applause. Many aliens seemed pleased with themselves. Some pointed at the human section and made jokes in their own languages. Ambassador Hyunwoo returned to his seat. He sat down next to his colleagues and spoke quietly to them. Captain So-Young nodded. Dr. Jamin closed his tablet and put it away. The ambassador stood again and walked back to the platform. The noise slowly died down as aliens realized he wanted to speak. "We understand the Council's position," he said simply. "Humanity will respect your decision." That was all. No angry speech, no threats, no promises of revenge, just quiet acceptance. The three humans gathered their things and left their seats. They walked down the long aisle toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Every alien eye followed them as they moved. Captain So Young activated her communication device as they reached the door. "All human diplomatic missions are to begin immediate withdrawal," she said quietly. "Effective immediately." The order went out across the galaxy. On 47 different worlds, human ambassadors and staff began packing. They closed their offices. They canceled their meetings. They loaded their ships and prepared to leave. There were no protests, no dramatic gestures, no angry words spoken to alien officials. The humans simply followed their orders and departed. Dr. J. Mean spent his last hours downloading files from the shared scientific databases. Other species had always been generous with their research, and humans had contributed their own discoveries. Now he copied everything they had access to before their permissions were removed. Within 1 week, every human diplomatic mission had left alien space. The embassies stood empty. The trade offices were closed. The research stations went dark. Some aliens felt relief. The unpredictable humans were gone. No more emotional outbursts. No more strange ideas about individual rights and personal freedom. The galaxy could return to its proper order. Chancellor Vorthak held a celebration dinner. "We have removed the disruptive element," he told his guests. "The Council can now focus on real civilization building without primitive interference." Trade Minister Zilneth agreed. Their crude technology was holding back progress. Now we can advance without their limitations. But a few beings were not so sure. Intelligence Chief Kaleth noticed that human cargo ships had also stopped coming. To the markets, some items were becoming harder to find. Certain medical supplies that came from human worlds were running low. "Should we be concerned?" she asked Admiral Graxis during the celebration. The blue-furred military leader waved one of his 6 hands dismissively. "They will be back," he said. "Humans need trade with other species to survive. They cannot last long on their own." But months passed, and no human ships appeared at any alien port. Communication attempts went unanswered. The human colonies that had been busy with activity suddenly went silent. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy. They had walked away without speaking another word, and now no one knew where they had gone. Some council members began to wonder if they had made the right choice, but it was too late to change their minds. The humans were gone, and they had left no way to contact them. The galaxy continued as it always had, but something felt different. Something important was missing, though most aliens could not say exactly what it was. 3 years had passed since the humans left. The galaxy had settled into its new rhythm without them. Most aliens had forgotten about the quiet species that once walked among them. But some changes were becoming hard to ignore. Intelligence Chief Kaleth sat in her dark office, studying reports from across the galaxy. Her insect-like body moved restlessly as she read. Multiple eyes scanned the data flowing across her screens. The numbers told a troubling story. Trade routes that had run smoothly for decades were now showing problems. Ships were arriving late. Some cargo was spoiled. Prices for basic goods were rising on dozens of worlds. She activated her communication system and called Admiral Graxis. The blue-furred military commander appeared on her screen. looking annoyed at being disturbed. "What is it, Calith?" he asked. "I am busy with defense preparations." "Admiral, we need to discuss the trade situation," she said. "Several important. Supply chains are breaking down." "So fix them," he replied. "That is not a military concern." "But it might become one," Calith insisted. "Food shortages on 3 worlds. Medical supply problems on 12 more. The Outer Rim colonies are struggling without regular deliveries." Admiral Graxis waved a hand dismissively. "These are temporary problems. The galaxy will adapt. We do not need humans to make our economy work." But Calith was not convinced. She had been tracking patterns that others missed. Her job was to notice what others overlooked, and she was noticing that humans had been involved in far more than anyone realized. The missing pieces were small at first, a type of grain that only human farmers had known how to grow in harsh climates, medical treatments that human doctors had developed for alien diseases, manufacturing processes that human engineers had quietly improved over the years. Merchant overlord Thex was feeling the problems more directly. His trade empire depended on moving goods efficiently across the galaxy, but his profits were dropping every month. He studied his financial reports with growing concern. Human worlds had provided 20% of agricultural exports, 30% of manufactured medical equipment, nearly half of all processed metals used in starship construction. "How? Did we not notice this before?" he asked his assistant, a thin purple being with too many arms. "The humans never made a big deal about their contributions," the assistant replied. "They just did their work quietly. We thought they were junior partners." "Junior partners who controlled major supply chains," Thex muttered. "This is becoming expensive." The merchant overlord tried to contact other suppliers to fill the gaps, but switching suppliers was not simple. Human factories had been designed to work with specific alien technologies. Human farms grew crops that were perfect for certain alien digestive systems. Human medical facilities had years of research on treating non-human patients. Replacing all of this would take time and cost enormous amounts of money. Many smaller traders could not afford the transition. They went out of business, leaving gaps in the supply network. Meanwhile, attempts to contact human space continued to fail. Every message sent to former human colonies received the same automated response. "Quarantine in effect. Do not approach." Several brave or foolish traders had tried to visit human worlds anyway. Their ships had simply disappeared. No distress, signals. No wreckage found. They vanished without a trace. Chancellor Vorthak was becoming frustrated with the constant complaints. Every day brought new problems that people expected him to solve. Food riots on agricultural worlds, factories closing due to lack of materials, planets demanding military protection for their trade routes. "Send more scout ships to human space," he ordered during a council meeting. "We need to establish contact." But the scout ships never returned either. They entered the region where human colonies had once been active and were never heard from again. No one knew what was happening to them. Dr. Narajin Yoon had been a human researcher who studied alien diseases. She had worked quietly in a small laboratory on a remote space station. Most aliens had barely noticed her, but her work had been vital. Before leaving, she had sent her final research to several alien medical centers. Her notes contained warnings about emerging diseases that could spread across multiple species. She had been developing vaccines and treatments that could save millions of lives. Now, 3 years later, the diseases she had predicted were spreading. The Zalathi plague had started on a mining world and was jumping between species. Alien doctors tried to recreate her work, but they lacked her understanding of cross-species biology. The plague spread to 6 worlds before anyone realized how serious it was. By then, it was too late to contain. Quarantine efforts failed. Disease continued to move through trade routes and diplomatic channels. Similar problems were appearing everywhere. Infrastructure that humans had maintained was breaking down. Diplomatic agreements that humans had helped negotiate were falling apart. Environmental projects that humans had managed were failing. Engineer Tai-Ho Shin had designed water purification systems for desert worlds. His systems had provided clean water for billions of aliens across the galaxy. But the systems needed regular maintenance and occasional upgrades. Without him, they began to fail. One by one, desert colonies lost their water supplies. Populations had to be evacuated. Entire worlds became uninhabitable again. The aliens who had mocked human technology found themselves desperately trying to understand how it worked. Intelligence Chief Kalith compiled all these reports into a massive database. The pattern was clear to her, even if others refused to see it. Humans had not been junior partners or primitive beings. They had been essential. "We made a mistake," she told herself quietly. "A very big mistake." She tried to present her findings to the council, but they did not want to listen. Admitting error was not something most alien leaders did easily. They preferred to blame other factors for their problems. "These are natural fluctuations in the galactic economy," declared Trade Minister Zilneth. "The system will balance itself." "Some worlds are always having problems," added Admiral Graxus. "We cannot solve everything for everyone." But the problems kept growing, and the mysterious disappearance of ships near human space was becoming impossible to ignore. Something was protecting those empty worlds, something that could make entire starships vanish without a trace. A few months later, a derelict ship was found drifting near an asteroid field. It was a human cargo vessel, but it had been modified with unknown technology. The hull showed signs of advanced shielding that no alien species had seen before. When salvage crews boarded the ship, they found it mostly empty. The cargo holds were clean. The crew quarters looked like they had been carefully evacuated. But in the ship's computer, they found a single message. "Phase 1 complete. Initiating Protocol 7. The message was time-stamped from 6 months ago. But no one knew what Phase 1 was, or what Protocol 7 meant. The humans had left behind a mystery wrapped in a riddle. Intelligence Chief Kalith studied the derelict ship personally. The technology was definitely human, but more advanced than anything they had shown before. The modifications suggested capabilities that humans had never revealed. They were hiding their true abilities, she realized. All this time, they were much more advanced than they let us see. This discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. If humans had been hiding advanced technology, what else had they been hiding? How much did the galaxy really know about the species they had dismissed? The questions multiplied, but answers remained scarce. The humans were gone, and they had taken their secrets with them. The galaxy was left to wonder what they had lost when they chose to walk away. 7 years had passed since humanity's departure. What had started as minor problems had grown into a crisis that threatened the entire galactic civilization. The council chambers that had once echoed with confident voices now filled with desperate arguments and angry accusations. President Moon Sik Choi stood on the observation deck of New Haven Station, hidden deep in an uncharted nebula. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the bustling activity of humanity's new home. Ships moved between orbital platforms. Construction crews worked on expanding the station's capabilities. Children played in parks that had been built inside rotating habitats. The humans had not simply vanished. They had moved to a place where no alien species would think to look. The nebula provided natural shielding from sensors. The dangerous radiation and gravitational anomalies kept casual explorers away. To everyone else, it was an empty region of space not worth visiting. "The latest reports from the Council worlds," said Admiral Eugene Han, joining the President, on the observation deck. She handed him a data tablet. "The situation continues to deteriorate." President Moonsick reviewed the intelligence summary. The Zalathi plague had now spread to 43 worlds. Trade networks were collapsing as supply chains broke down. 3 major alien civilizations were on the verge of economic collapse. "Any regrets about our decision?" Admiral Eugene asked. "None," he replied firmly. "They made their choice. We simply respected it." The President remembered the years of preparation that had led to this moment. While alien species had mocked human technology and dismissed human contributions, humanity had been quietly building their backup plan. Hidden colonies in dangerous regions of space, secret supply caches on uninhabited worlds, advanced technology that they had never revealed to others. Back in Council space, Chancellor Vorthak was facing the worst crisis of his career. His once powerful position was crumbling as member species blamed him for the growing disasters. "The food riots on Centauri Prime are spreading," reported Emergency Coordinator Seath, a nervous being who changed colors when stressed. 3 cities are under martial law." "What about the medical supply situation?" Vorthak asked. "Getting worse?" "The Zalathi plague has mutated again. Without the human-developed vaccines, we cannot stop it. Death tolls are rising on multiple worlds." The Chancellor slammed his clawed hand on his desk. "Where are the humans? How can an entire species just disappear?" But that was exactly what had happened. Every attempt to locate human colonies had failed. The worlds they had once inhabited were empty. Their cities had been carefully dismantled. Their factories had been stripped down and moved elsewhere. Even their graveyards had been relocated. It was as if humanity had planned for this exact scenario, as if they had known that one day they might need to vanish completely from known space. Dr. Bo-Ra Nam worked in the Intelligence Center of New Haven Station. Her job was to monitor the situation in the galaxy they had left behind. The data streaming in from hidden sensors told a story of progressive collapse. "The Cretan Empire is requesting emergency aid from the Council," she reported to her colleagues. "Their agricultural worlds are failing without human-designed irrigation systems." "And the Valdorian Republic?" asked her supervisor. "Civil war brewing. 3 of their member worlds want to withdraw from the alliance. They blame the central government for the trade crisis." The humans watched their former galaxy tear itself apart, but they felt no joy in seeing others suffer. They had tried to warn the aliens that their contributions were important. They had offered partnership and cooperation. The Council had chosen isolation and superiority instead. Now the consequences of that choice were becoming clear. Ancient, automated defense systems that humans had quietly disabled were coming back online. For decades, human technicians had maintained these dangerous relics from past wars. Without their careful oversight, the systems were activating on their own. The first incident happened near a busy trade route. An old weapons platform that had been dormant for centuries suddenly powered up and fired on passing ships. 12 vessels were destroyed before military forces could respond. Similar activations occurred across the galaxy. Ancient minefields. became active again. Automated weapon systems targeted anything that moved. Space lanes that had been safe for generations became deadly obstacles. Alien engineers tried to shut down these systems, but they lacked the access codes and technical knowledge that humans had possessed. Every attempt to disable the defenses seemed to trigger more activations. Admiral Graxus was struggling to maintain order with his military forces spread thin across dozens of crisis zones. How did the humans know about all these hidden weapons? He demanded during an emergency military briefing. They had been maintaining them for years, replied his intelligence officer. We thought they were just doing routine technical work. We never realized they were the only ones keeping these systems under control. The blue-furred admiral felt a chill of understanding. The humans had not just been maintaining alien technology. They had been protecting the galaxy from threats that others had forgotten existed. Resource conflicts were escalating as trade agreements collapsed. Species that had relied on human-mediated negotiations were now at each other's throats. Border. Disputes that had been peacefully resolved for decades were erupting into violence. The humans had served as neutral mediators in hundreds of diplomatic situations. They had no ancient territorial claims or religious grudges against other species. This had made them perfect intermediaries for resolving conflicts. Without their diplomatic services, old hatreds were resurging. The Turthan Confederation and the Nexus Alliance were mobilizing fleets against each other. The Silicon Brothers were threatening to cut off mineral exports to anyone who did not meet their demands. Wars that humans had prevented were now beginning to seem inevitable. On New Haven Station, President Moonsick received reports of each new crisis with grim satisfaction, not because he wanted others to suffer, but because it proved that humanity had been right. They had been essential partners, not junior members of galactic civilization. Should we consider revealing ourselves? Admiral Yu Jin asked during their daily briefing. Some of these conflicts could be stopped with a simple message from us. Not yet, the president replied. They need to understand the full cost of their decision. When they are ready to treat us as equals, they will find a way to reach us, the Eye. Search for humanity had become desperate. Scout fleets were exploring every system that humans had ever visited. Archaeological teams were studying abandoned human settlements for clues about where they might have gone. But the humans had been thorough in covering their tracks. They had spent decades preparing for their departure. Every piece of evidence that might lead to their new home had been carefully removed or misdirected. Intelligence Chief Calith had been promoted to head the search effort. Her insect eyes studied star charts and sensor readings with obsessive intensity. She had teams working around the clock to find any trace of human activity. They could not have just vanished, she insisted to her staff. They must be somewhere. Ships cannot hide forever. But week after week, the searches came up empty. The humans had become ghosts in the void. Technology failures were becoming more common as human-designed compatibility systems reached the end of their operational cycles. Alien devices that had worked together smoothly for years were now malfunctioning or refusing to interface properly. Human engineers had created countless small programs and protocols that allowed different alien technologies to work together. These hidden compatibility layers were now expiring or breaking down without maintenance. Communication networks were fragmenting. Transport systems were becoming unreliable. Even basic utilities were failing as integrated systems lost their ability to coordinate. The galaxy was learning that civilization was more fragile than they had realized. It depended on countless small connections and hidden relationships that most people never noticed. When those connections broke, everything else began to fall apart. A single transmission finally reached Council space after 7 years of silence. It appeared on every communication network simultaneously, broadcast on frequencies that should have been impossible to access. The message was brief and delivered in the same calm voice that Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim had used years before. "You chose this path. We are simply respecting your decision." Then the transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to wonder what it meant. Were the humans watching? Were they still close by? Or was this a final goodbye from a species that had moved beyond their reach forever? The message sparked both hope and fear among alien civilizations. Some saw it as a sign that contact might still be possible. Others worried that humanity had become something more dangerous during their years in exile. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same without them. 12 years had passed since humanity's departure. The galaxy that had once laughed at human primitiveness was now collapsing under the weight of problems that seemed impossible to solve. 3 founding members of the Galactic Council had withdrawn from the Alliance, taking their fleets and resources with them. Former Chancellor Vorthak sat in a small apartment on a minor trading station. His grand office in the council chambers was gone. His political career had ended in disgrace when angry species voted him out of power. Now he spent his days drinking alien alcohol and watching news reports about the continuing crisis. The reptilian leader who had once dismissed humans as too emotional now lived with the bitter knowledge that his decision had destroyed everything he had worked to build. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. New council leader Zephyra was younger and more practical than her predecessor. She had been elected specifically to solve the human problem. Her species, the Valdani, were known for their pragmatic approach to difficult situations. "We need to find them," she declared during her first major address to the reduced council. "The galaxy cannot continue like this. Too many worlds are suffering. Too many people are dying." The search for humanity had become the council's top priority. Massive fleets explored every corner of known space. Scientists studied the few remaining clues about human activities. Diplomats reached out to species that might have maintained contact with human traders, but 12 years of searching had yielded almost nothing. A few abandoned human outposts in dangerous regions of space, some old mining facilities that had been stripped clean, ancient supply caches that had been emptied decades ago. It was as if humanity had planned their disappearance for generations, not just years. Captain Yoonji Lee commanded one of humanity's deep exploration vessels, the Silent Pioneer. For the past 12 years, she had been mapping regions of space that other species considered too dangerous or worthless to explore. Black hole clusters, neutron star graveyards, regions where space itself was twisted by exotic radiation. Her ship was not just exploring these areas. It was building the infrastructure for humanity's expansion into territories that no alien species would ever claim. Mining operations in asteroid fields surrounded by deadly radiation, research stations near collapsed stars, shipyards hidden in the gravitational shadows of massive planets. "Survey complete for Sector Zeta 9, she reported to Admiral Yoo-Jin Han. 3 more suitable systems identified for Phase 3 development. "Excellent work, Captain," the Admiral replied. "How many does that bring our total to?" 147 confirmed systems with full industrial potential. Another 300 with mining or research possibilities. While the aliens searched desperately for humanity's hiding place, humans were quietly building an entirely new civilization in places no one else would think to look. Dr. Woo Jin Park ran the terraforming operations for humanity's expansion program. His teams had been working for over a decade to make hostile worlds suitable for human habitation. Planets with poisonous atmospheres were slowly being converted. Worlds locked in ice ages were being warmed. Desert planets were being given water. Cycles. The work was slow and required technologies that aliens had not yet developed. But humans had always been good at making difficult places livable. Now, they were doing it on a massive scale. The Kepler 442 system will be ready for full colonization in 18 months, he reported during a planning meeting. The atmospheric processors are ahead of schedule. And the new Titan project? Asked President Moon-sik Choi. More complex, but promising. We should have a full Earth-class world ready within 5 years. While aliens struggled with plague and famine, humans were creating new worlds where their children could grow up free from the prejudices and limitations of the old galaxy. Back in Council space, Intelligence Chief Calith had been replaced after years of failure to locate humanity. Her successor, a methodical being named Nexus 7, approached the problem with fresh perspective. Previous searches focused on habitable worlds and known trade routes, Nexus 7 explained to Council leader Zephyra. But what if the humans went somewhere that is not habitable? Somewhere dangerous that we would not normally explore? This new approach led to searches in areas that had been previously ignored. Dead systems with collapsed stars, regions where space radiation made long-term habitation impossible, sectors where gravitational anomalies made navigation extremely difficult. The searches still found nothing, but they began to reveal something disturbing. There were signs of recent activity in these dangerous areas, mining operations that had been carefully concealed, construction debris from unknown projects, energy signatures that suggested advanced technology. Someone was building something in the most hostile regions of space. Someone with technology advanced enough to work in conditions that would kill most species. Ambassador Seon-ho Kong had once been considered a junior member of the human diplomatic corps. Other species had barely noticed him during negotiations. He was quiet, polite, and seemingly unimportant compared to senior diplomats like Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim. But Seon-ho had been running intelligence operations for decades. While senior diplomats handled public meetings, he had been mapping alien military installations, recording private conversations, and building detailed files on every important political figure in the galaxy. His network of informants had included aliens who were sympathetic to human causes, merchants who appreciated human honesty in business deals, scientists who respected human research methods, military officers who had been impressed by human strategic thinking. These informants had continued to feed information to humanity even after the official departure. They provided updates on political developments, military movements, and economic conditions throughout the galaxy. Through this network, humanity knew everything that was happening in the space they had left behind. They knew which species were suffering most from the crisis. They knew which leaders were desperate enough to consider real negotiations. They knew which worlds were on the verge of complete collapse. The information allowed humanity to stay one step ahead of every search effort. When alien fleets approached regions where human operations were active, those operations simply moved deeper into unexplored space. Finally, after 12 years of silence, humanity decided to send a signal. A small probe appeared in the outer system of the Council's homeworld. It was clearly of human design, but it used technology that no alien species had seen before. The probe's hull seemed to bend light around itself, making it nearly invisible to sensors. When Council ships approached, The probe, it transmitted a simple message: "We are willing to listen." The message created a sensation throughout the remaining Council worlds. Humanity was still alive. They were still out there somewhere, and they were finally ready to make contact. But the probe's technology raised disturbing questions. The stealth capabilities were far beyond anything humans had shown before their departure. The energy systems were more advanced than most alien technologies. The materials used in construction seemed to incorporate principles that alien scientists did not understand. How did they advance so quickly? Nexus 7 asked his analysis team. 12 years is not enough time to develop this level of technology. Unless they already had it, replied one of his scientists. Unless they were hiding their true capabilities all along. This possibility sent shockwaves through the remaining alien governments. If humans had been hiding advanced technology during their time in the Council, what else had they been hiding? How much did they really know about alien military capabilities? How many secrets had they gathered during their decades of seemingly innocent cooperation? Council leader Zafira authorized immediate diplomatic overtures. Messages were sent to the probe asking for formal negotiations. Offers were made for economic aid and technological exchange. Some species even offered territory and full membership in their governments. But the probe remained silent after its initial message. It continued to orbit the outer system, watching and recording everything that happened. Alien ships that approached too closely simply lost sensor contact with it. Attempts to capture or disable it failed when the probe seemed to phase out of normal space. Humanity was demonstrating capabilities that bordered on impossible. They had technology that could make objects invisible to sensors. They could hide entire fleets in regions of space that should have been uninhabitable. They had intelligence networks that allowed them to monitor alien activities across the galaxy. The species that had once mocked human primitiveness were now faced with the reality that humanity had become something far beyond their understanding. The quiet partners who had seemed content to work in the background had revealed themselves as masters of technologies and strategies that alien civilizations could barely comprehend. As news of the probe spread throughout the galaxy, desperate, alien leaders began preparing their most humble apologies. They knew that humanity held all the advantages now. The question was whether humans would be merciful enough to save the civilization that had rejected them. The galaxy waited in fearful anticipation for humanity's terms. 15 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. The same chambers that had once echoed with alien laughter now filled with desperate voices pleading for forgiveness. The Great Hall looked smaller somehow, with so many empty seats where former member species had once sat. Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim stood at the entrance to the council chambers, but he was no longer the same man who had left in quiet dignity years before. His hair had turned completely gray, but his eyes held a sharpness that had not been there before. Behind him stood an honor guard of human marines, whose equipment made even the most advanced alien technology look primitive. Council leader Zafira rose from her seat as the human delegation entered. Her species was known for pride, but now she bowed deeply in a gesture of respect that shocked the remaining alien observers. "Ambassador Kim," she said formally, "the Galactic Council acknowledges our grave error in judgment 15 years ago. We formally request the reopening of diplomatic relations with humanity." The human ambassador walked slowly to the central platform. His footsteps echoed in the hushed hall. When he reached the speaking position, He looked out at the alien faces, watching him with a mixture of hope and fear. "You requested this meeting," he said simply. "We are here to listen." Over the following days, the apologies came in fragments, just as the title of their story had predicted. Each species offered their own version of regret, their own explanation for what had gone wrong. The Krathan Empire's representative, a tall being with flowing robes, spoke first. "Our people have suffered greatly without human agricultural expertise. We acknowledge that we underestimated your contributions to galactic food security. We offer full compensation for past insults and request renewed trade agreements," said the Fur. Turthan Confederation followed. "Human medical research saved millions of our people from disease outbreaks over the years. We did not properly value this contribution. We offer technological exchanges and research partnerships as an apology." One by one, different species admitted different pieces of their mistake. Some had relied on human manufacturing, others had depended on human diplomatic mediation. A few had secretly used human military advice for their defense planning. But no single species wanted to admit the full scope of what they had lost. Each group focused only on their own specific needs, still not understanding the bigger picture. Director Mi-Young Lim sat behind Ambassador Kim, quietly recording every word and gesture. Her role as head of Human Intelligence Services had given her detailed files on every alien representative in the room. She knew their political weaknesses, their economic vulnerabilities, and their military capabilities better than they knew themselves. "The Valdorian Republic has suffered a 30% drop in industrial output," she whispered to the ambassador through their private communication link. "Their military is deployed on 4 different border conflicts. They are desperate for any assistance we might provide." Ambassador Kim nodded slightly but showed no other reaction. The humans had come to this meeting with complete information about the galaxy's current state. They knew exactly how much leverage they possessed. Captain In Seop An commanded the human fleet that had accompanied the diplomatic mission. His ships remained in the outer system, but their presence was felt throughout the council chambers. Alien sensors could barely detect the human vessels, and what they could see defied easy explanation. The human ships seemed to phase in and out of normal space. Their energy signatures suggested power sources that alien physics could not account for. Their hull materials appeared to be constructed from elements that should not exist in stable form. "How many ships do you count?" Admiral Graxus asked his sensor operators nervously. "Uncertain, sir," came the reply. "The readings keep changing. Sometimes we detect 5 vessels, sometimes 20. Sometimes they seem to disappear entirely." The blue-furred military leader felt a chill of recognition. The humans were demonstrating the same technological superiority that had allowed them to vanish from the galaxy 15 years before. But now that technology was being displayed as a quiet threat. As the apologies continued, patterns began to emerge. The aliens were willing to admit their mistakes, but they still did not understand what those mistakes really meant. They saw the crisis as a series of technical problems that could be solved with the right agreements and compensation. But Ambassador Kim and his team knew the truth. The galaxy had not just lost human technical expertise, they had lost the species that had been quietly holding their entire civilization together. The Silicon Brothers offer rare mineral rights in exchange for renewed mining partnerships, announced another speaker. The Nexus Alliance proposes joint military exercises to rebuild trust between our forces, said another. The Crystalline Collective suggests shared research facilities to develop new technologies together, offered a third. Each offer was carefully considered by the human delegation, but Ambassador Kim's responses were polite and non-committal. "We will take your proposals under consideration," he said repeatedly. The aliens grew increasingly frustrated as the day progressed. They had expected immediate negotiations. They had hoped that humanity would eagerly accept their apologies and return to their former role as helpful junior partners. Instead, the humans seemed detached and calculating. They asked detailed questions about alien capabilities and resources. They requested complete information about military assets and economic conditions. They demanded access to scientific databases and diplomatic communications. It slowly became clear that humanity was not interested in returning to their old position. They were evaluating the galaxy as potential partners, not as former masters to serve. President Moon-Sik Choi watched the proceedings from New Haven Station. The negotiations were being broadcast live to human colonies throughout their new territory. Billions of humans who had been born in exile were seeing the aliens who had rejected their parents now begging for their return. "Are we being too harsh?" asked Admiral Eugene Han, joining the president in his private viewing room. "They need to understand that the old relationship is over," he replied. "We are not coming back as junior partners. If they want our help, it will be as equals or not at all." The revelation of humanity's true technological advancement had shaken alien confidence to its core. Scientists who had mocked human primitive rockets now studied sensor readings of ships that seemed to violate known physics. Military leaders who had dismissed human tactics now faced the reality that humanity had been hiding capabilities that made alien defenses obsolete. "How long were they ahead of us?" Council Leader Zephyra asked her science advisor privately. "Unknown," came the nervous reply. "The technology they are displaying suggests research programs that must have been running for decades, possibly centuries. They may have been more advanced than us from the very beginning." This possibility terrified alien leaders. If humanity had always been technologically superior, why had they accepted junior status in galactic civilization? Why had they tolerated mockery and dismissal from species they could have easily dominated? The answer was becoming clear as negotiations continued. Humans had not been seeking power or dominance. They had been seeking partnership and cooperation. When that was denied, they had simply walked away to build something better on their own. The human delegation requests a recess for internal consultations, announced Ambassador Kim after 3 days of testimonials and offers. The aliens waited nervously while the humans withdrew to their secure facility. Hours passed without word. Some alien representatives began to worry that humanity would simply leave again, walking away as quietly as they had 15 years before. When the humans returned, Ambassador Kim carried a data tablet containing their response to the galaxy's apologies. "Humanity has carefully considered all proposals and statements made by Council species," he began. "We acknowledge your regrets about past decisions. However, we cannot return to the old system of relationships." Worried murmurs filled the hall. Many aliens had feared this response. "Instead," the ambassador continued, "we offer a new compact based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Those species that accept these terms will have access to human technological and economic cooperation. Those that do not will remain free to pursue their own path without interference from us." He activated a holographic display that showed the proposed new agreement. The terms were generous but firm. Humans would share their advanced technology and provide economic assistance. In return, alien species would treat humanity as equal partners in all decisions affecting galactic civilization. Some species immediately accepted the terms. They had suffered too much during humanity's absence to risk losing this opportunity. Others hesitated, unwilling to give up their traditional positions of superiority. This represents a fundamental change in galactic power structure, protested one alien representative. Yes, Ambassador Kim replied simply. It does. The negotiations continued for weeks as different species decided whether to accept humanity's new compact or maintain their independence. The galaxy slowly divided into those who embraced the new partnership and those who chose to go their own way. For species that joined the compact, the benefits were immediate. Human medical teams arrived to combat the Zalathi plague.